Before COVID-19, many of our students' experiences with trauma, such as abuse, neglect, domestic violence, parental substance use, school violence, bullying, and natural disasters, created higher risk for the development of toxic stress. Now add to this all of the stressors of a pandemic, and these last few months have created a perfect storm of stress for students, as well as educators and families all across the country. My name is Brandon, and I'll be guiding you through our learning today, where we will be exploring how this stress and trauma may show up in your classroom, whether in person or online. Let's start with a look at what recent research says about how COVID-19 is creating and deepening challenges related to toxic stress. First, over the past months, many systems designed to protect and keep children safe, such as community, religious, and school involvement, have drastically changed overnight. These webs of support are the backdrop for healthy social, emotional, and cognitive development, and often provide foundational relationships and routines. So it's no wonder that incidences of adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, have increased at this time. Many children have experienced increased exposure to abuse, neglect, and domestic violence, with potential long-term impacts on their mental health and sense of safety. Second, the stress of job loss and economic instability have created a sharp drop in family well-being. Researchers Dr. Anna Gassman-Pines and Dr. Elizabeth O. Onanot from Duke and Columbia University recently found in a sample of working parents that the mental health of parents and their children has deteriorated since the start of the crisis, with parents in this study showing a 67% increase in severe mental health symptoms, and children showing a 42% increase in behaviors that may indicate an underlying mental health condition. We know that you, as educators, will be spending a lot of time with children as they navigate remote and in-person school, and that you will absorb much of the impact that the stress of COVID-19 has had on our students. That's why the TEA has launched Project Restore, and this trauma-informed training video series designed to connect you with relevant science and strategies that can help you address your own emotional needs, as well as the needs of your students, their families, and your colleagues. If you're joining us for the first time, please take a moment before you dive in to view the brief introductory video on our homepage, as well as the first two videos of our series. Our third video begins with a focus on the impacts of recent and ongoing stress on the lives of students. In the last part of this video, we will begin to build your knowledge around the role of relationships in building security and resilience in students in the midst of stress. While it is crucial to be aware of these stressors, it is also so important to remember that just as our most intense negative experiences shape us, our most positive experiences also have a profound influence. That's why this video will focus on creating positive and healthy experiences for students, while also acknowledging that many student stressors are beyond our control, and that this can be frustrating and heartbreaking. Our objectives for our time together are to understand the stress students have experienced, recognize potential student stress reminders, and learn strategies for establishing secure relationships with students. We'll start with quiet written self-reflection. Grab your pen and paper, and using what you've learned about trauma and stress so far, spend some time reflecting on the following question. What stressors have my students and their families experienced during this pandemic? Take all the time you need. Simply pause and restart the video when you are ready. Welcome back. You likely identified a wide variety of stressors impacting your students and their families. While not an exhaustive list, here are some of the stressors your students might be facing due to COVID-19. Separation from friends, missing the stability of school, loneliness, economic anxieties, fears about the pandemic, food scarcity, grief and loss, missed milestones, and academic stress. Additionally, many of your students may have firsthand exposure to adverse childhood experiences such as witnessing violence or housing insecurity. It is also likely that many of your students have reacted to these stressors with fight, flight, and freeze responses. Let's explore what this might look like as we return to school. But first, a quick review. When we encounter a stressor, our bodies may launch a stress response to protect us. In these moments, we might go into a fight or flight state. In addition, a third stress response, freeze, may be launched in a last-ditch effort to respond to threat. Freeze is a collapse or immobilization response meant to protect us from harm. While all three stress responses help us jump into action in the face of danger, when stress is ongoing or when stressors lead to the development of stress responses, even when there is no danger, feeling unsafe can become an everyday experience. These consistent and overwhelming unsafe feelings disrupt optimal learning, growth, and development. You might be wondering, what do these stress responses look like in the classroom? How can I recognize them? Are there some common behaviors associated with each stress response? A student having a fight response might engage in physical or verbal aggression, like kicking, hitting, or shouting. An example of this might be a student who, in an in-person school setting, becomes rough on the playground, pushing others down. In a virtual classroom, this student might have an angry verbal outburst or punch a screen. A student having a flight response might literally run away or hide, or may engage in distracting or funny behavior. This might look like constantly making goofy faces on screen, walking away from the computer, or turning off video, or maybe it's that student who never shows up for remote instruction. Finally, a student having a freeze response might whine, cling, emotionally withdraw, or zone out. During remote instruction, this could look like a distant, glazed over look. In an in-person school setting, it could be a student who just puts their head down on their desk and doesn't want to talk when facing a problem. In all three scenarios, the important thing for us educators to remember is that behavior is a form of communication, and these behaviors are often the survival brain's way of communicating an important message. I don't feel safe. I don't feel calm, or I feel out of control. Remember, this is about a student's perception of safety. Even when there doesn't seem to be an identifiable source of stress, a student may feel unsafe based on past experiences or subtle cues. Here's an example of how this might play out in your classroom. Meet 6-year-old Farouk. Farouk has developmental delays in social communication. Before lockdown, Farouk had been working with Mr. Jones, his special education teacher, to gain skills in reading social cues and participating in social interactions. During the lockdown, Farouk has had less support and practice time with peers and has experienced frequent stress responses, specifically a fight response, screaming and hitting whenever he had trouble interacting with his mother or brother. Now imagine Farouk is back at school and suddenly needs to interact with educators and peers often. Complex social interactions may become a stress reminder for Farouk and may send his body into alarm mode, making it even more challenging for him to interact. For Farouk, the past is present, and as he faces new challenges, his behavior and learning are impacted. Here's another example. 14-year-old Grace did not see friends for 6 straight months. She felt isolated and lonely, generating stress responses for Grace, specifically a flight response, which looked like emotional withdrawal and sadness. Now, imagine that Grace starts back to school in a hybrid model, attending in person on Monday and Tuesday. Each Tuesday afternoon, Grace becomes sad and withdrawn as it serves as a stress reminder for when she could not see her friends. All three stress responses, fight, flight, or freeze, take students into what we call states of dysregulation. Dysregulation is the experience of not feeling calm, grounded, and safe, and therefore not ready to connect and learn. When dysregulated, we often feel either like we're running too high, we'll call this the red zone, or running too low, we'll call this the blue zone. Some models of regulation include other colors to illustrate different states, but for the sake of simplicity, we're going to stick with blue and red to represent dysregulated states. When we're feeling just right, calm, grounded, safe, this is what we'll call the green zone. Whenever a student appears to be in the red or blue zone, the student is letting you know they need help. Remember, all behavior is a form of communication. Our goal in these moments is to first identify that the student is in the red or blue zone, and then help the student back toward the green zone, to a place where their behavior communicates, I feel safe and calm. This looks like bright eyes, relaxed body, and positive interactions. All students, in fact all humans, go through stress responses and dysregulation as a normal part of living in a stressful world. And while many students will bounce back easily this year, keep in mind that a student who's experienced high or toxic levels of stress without protection and recovery will more frequently experience stress and dysregulation and need a lot more help getting into the green zone. The following examples may signal that a student could be dealing with toxic stress. While not an exhaustive list, you may consider getting support from a mental health provider in your district or network when you see the following: a student quickly and/or frequently becoming very upset, seemingly out of nowhere. A student who is not able to recover from stress responses, as in they stay in fight, flight, or freeze for a very long time. Helping them get back to green feels almost impossible. A student who never really seems to be relaxed, rested, and calm. A student who is withdrawn, disengaged, or exhibits avoidance behaviors, for example, taking frequent trips to the nurse. Let's review what we've covered so far. In this chapter, we learned about the stress students have experienced during and before COVID, the states of regulation, red, blue, and green, and the ways that some classroom behaviors such as aggression or withdrawal may indicate a student does not feel safe and needs your help. To learn more about recognizing dysregulation, check out the resources on our website. Finally, as you take all of this in, we invite you to check in with yourself. Are you running red, blue, or green today? Let's take a pause and take a few deep breaths before moving on. Start by rolling your shoulders down your back, closing your eyes and taking in one deep breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now slowly let this breath out, releasing tension in your shoulders and face. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's repeat. Now when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Now that we know the ways that students can react to stress through action, also known as fight, flight, and freeze, and the ways that students respond to stress in their bodies and with their emotions known as the red, green, and blue states of regulation, we can now begin to imagine ways in which stress might be triggered for students after COVID-19 or other stressful experiences. First, let's remember that, like our educator Sarah from the second video in our series, many students are experiencing new stressors on top of pre-pandemic stressors. As a result, they are developing new stress reminders. For Sarah, issues related to childcare and schedule changes were reminders of the high stress she experienced in the spring. To get in the shoes of our students, our next exercise will help us consider what events at school might serve as reminders of past stress. In a moment, I will review a list of common experiences children have had during and before COVID-19. As I read out the list, go ahead and write each item in the list on a piece of paper in one column, building a table that we will use in the following exercise. Concerns around safety of caregivers. School changes. Lack of academic success. Bullying. Virus and health-related fears. Loneliness. Food scarcity. Home and economic insecurity. Returning home to a stressful or difficult situation. Now, for each of these categories, think of examples where a student's experiences in school, whether remote or in person, might be reminders of these earlier stressors. For example, drop-off time might be a scenario at school that creates fear and anxiety about safety of caregivers. Another example, a sudden change to remote instruction may bring up fearful feelings of insecurity from the school changes that took place in spring. As you think through potential stressors for students, we encourage you to stop and consider the lens of different student populations. Students with disabilities, English learners, students who are experiencing homelessness, students in foster care, and other historically underserved student groups. Now, take the time you need to continue filling out this chart. Simply pause and restart the video when you are ready. Welcome back. Let's turn back to our chart and review a few examples together of potential stress reminders that may come up in the course of a school day. Difficulties learning a new concept through remote instruction might remind a student of lack of academic success in the past. Accidentally violating social distancing rules might remind a student of virus and health-related fears. Starting remote learning with a new teacher in class might bring up feelings of loneliness from the spring when COVID-19 started. Changes in lunch or snack procedures might be a stress reminder for food scarcity. And finally, the end of the school day, whether remote or in person, might remind a student of returning home to a stressful or difficult situation. Let's do a quick review. In this chapter, you learned how to recognize stress reminders in students. You now have the beginnings of a roadmap of the potentially sensitive or stress-inducing experiences for students as they are returning to school, which is great. Just knowing this can help you prepare for what you might do to help the student get back in that green zone and help meet their need for safety in the moment. We'll dive into more specific strategies for de-escalating students in our next video. But first, we want to introduce you to a fourth stress response that is essential to the work that educators do. We learned about fight, flight, and freeze earlier. There is actually a fourth response that researcher Dr. Liesl Eberson calls the flocking response, which is the concept of using relationships and interdependence as a pathway back to safety and the green zone. When a student is displaying stress behavior, flocking with someone they have built a secure relationship with over time, like a caregiver or educator, is one powerful way to calm down. Returning to the green zone with the help of another person in this way is called co-regulation. Over time, through repeated co-regulation experiences, students begin to develop skills for regulating themselves independently, also known as self-regulation. By staying in the green zone themselves and providing opportunity for calming connection, notice how the educator in this visual brings this student back into the green zone. There are many ways to support students back into the green zone, and we'll dig deeper into that in future videos. But examples of co-regulation include providing empathy, providing calming eye contact and voice, or helping a student to choose a calming activity such as listening to music or taking deep breaths. With enough repeated experiences of being brought back into the green zone with the help of a trusted adult, students learn that coping with stress, also known as resilience, can be developed through relationships. In the words of researcher Dr. Kelly Munger, resilience is relational. Of course, in order for students to use the flocking response during times of stress, they first need to build trust and safety with their teacher. As educators, you are already an expert in this. But let's take a moment to unpack a little more. Thinking back over your own years as a student, who was that one teacher who made a difference for you? What qualities made this relationship special? Take all the time you need to answer. Simply pause and restart the video when you're ready. Welcome back. When we asked educators this question, here are some of the answers we received. She was playful, but also challenged me. I was a nervous kid, but he made me feel safe and successful. I sensed she believed in me. I felt acknowledged and challenged. She showed interest in me and also was very empathetic. He was sincere and vulnerable and always tuned in to what was going on. She was kind, compassionate, and protected me when I was bullied. He expected a ton from the students, but he clearly enjoyed us. He laughed with us and knew what was happening in our lives. Many of the qualities people describe in that one special teacher, invested, empathetic, playful, genuine, sincere, and vulnerable, are qualities of what is called a secure attachment figure. A secure attachment figure is someone in a child's life who offers a continuity and security and who has the ability to soothe the child in times of stress. But how do these educators do this? And in our current circumstances, with added challenges such as remote instruction and new realities such as masks and social distancing, how can we adapt strategies to strengthen relationships? Let's explore just a few ways you can build secure relationships in both the remote and in-person classroom. We'll dig into this a lot more in our next video. As you know, students need to feel seen and known. To provide this for students, create a regular cadence of one-on-one check-ins, even if short. In-person check-ins are awesome when possible, but we've heard stories of teachers using many forms of communication such as video chat, phone, email, or even old-fashioned snail mail. Whatever it takes to establish those daily touchstones will let students know that you see them. You can also use daily hello videos or in-person morning meetings, infusing them with the message of, "I'm here for you. I care about you. We can do this together." Especially if you are providing asynchronous instruction. This will remind students that they are on your radar. In morning videos or meetings, you can create space for students to start their day with sharing and connecting. By alternating silly, get-to-know-you questions with those that create space for emotional processing, you can establish a safe and playful environment for relationships. Fun games, either in groups or one-on-one, and open-ended questions will give you a window into what makes each student unique. Rather than jumping into fix or change feelings, use empathy when students express concerns or feelings. This sounds like, "You're feeling upset?" or "I see your frustration with this assignment." By reflecting the student's experience with phrases like this, it helps them feel seen and like they can trust you to listen. Finally, many students returning to in-person school will have their temperature taken each day to check for fever. You can also take the emotional temperature of your students daily, identifying whether students are running green, blue, or red. You can do this through a Google form, brief chats, or check-ins. As your relationships grow, a daily temperature check will help you identify when a student needs more support. Let's bring back our 2 students struggling with stress reminders at school to explore how relationships can help. Farouk was able to flock with his special education teacher, Mr. Jones. Why? Because Mr. Jones had worked with Farouk in the spring. He knew how much Farouk loved music and used music to help Farouk feel safe and known. When Farouk was upset, Mr. Jones was a safe person for Farouk. And of course, they often listened to music together when Farouk needed space to calm down. And Grace? She received a direct message from Mrs. Rodriguez, her English teacher, on Wednesday mornings. "Hey, how's it going? You need anything today? I know you really miss coming to school every day." Grace was pretty hesitant at first to respond to Mrs. Rodriguez, but these messages planted a seed of trust between Grace and her teacher that would continue to grow. Mrs. Rodriguez, of course, was not fully aware of her impact, but like many of you, she was simply committed to the relationship. As we get ready for the next 2 videos, which are packed with practical strategies, we want to acknowledge that as an educator, on top of other stressors in your life, you absorb many of the worries, stress, and even traumas that students experience. When this experience of being exposed to trauma creates stress for you, this is called secondary trauma. If you've recognized indicators of stress and trauma in yourself while watching this series, consider ways that you can flock with secure attachment figures in your life, or with new attachment figures, such as a licensed mental health professional. Like your students, you are worthy of caring and secure relationships. And as a reminder, you can always circle back to our previous video in the series, which was all about self-care for you as an educator. Let's take a moment to review. In this chapter, we learned strategies for building secure relationships with students. We also learned about a 4th stress response, known as flocking, which is when we stick together to get through stressful times. Finally, we learned about co-regulation and how when teachers serve as secure attachment figures who build safety and trust, students learn to rely on them. This experience of co-regulation ultimately helps students develop self-regulation. Before closing out, let's review key concepts from our entire video. We learned about potential impacts of stress on our students. We learned about the fight, flight, freeze, and flock responses and what dysregulation might look like in the classroom. We brainstormed potential stress reminders for students and learned how to identify them. Lastly, we learned strategies for building secure relationships in the remote and in-person classroom. Our next video will be packed with strategies for continuing to build strong relationships and helping students back into the green zone when stressed. Today's action step is simple. Send a text to an educator friend reminding them of the powerful impact they have on students. "Hey Sheila, just wanted to say, I know this is a stressful year back. I see how much the students love and trust you. You serve as an inspiration for me. You are amazing." Finally, before you leave us, go ahead and complete this check for understanding to solidify your learning today. We'll see you next time.